What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's still Monday, December 1st. We are going to recap lead investigator Harrison Schmidt's testimony. Before we jump in, a few things to mention. Brian's attorney indicated he will take the stand. Now, it's not a guarantee. We'll find out. I personally didn't think he would take the stand at all, especially after pleading guilty to those other two charges. I thought they would just let the state prove premeditation and first-degree murder, but I'm totally here for it. I think it's going to be a hot mess, and it usually is when a defendant takes the stand. Also, tomorrow, there is a chance we will have a short day due to weather possibly impacting travel home. The judge will make that call tomorrow. According to the state, there's still about 40 more minutes of these interviews to play. They'll finish up direct, then cross-exam. After that, they'll call a witness to talk about the Safari searches, as well as an iPad and work the witness did on one of the phones. And Anna's boyfriend could be called as early as Thursday. So let's jump into lead investigator Harrison Schmidt's testimony. He started the case January 4th, 2023, around 4 p.m. after being notified about a missing person. Once at the police station, he coordinated with the patrol officers. He reviewed their reports, and then he started to get background information. And he went to Brian's house around 6:30 p.m. with Officer Lawrence, who was the initial responding officer to that missing person call. After arriving, he was greeted by Brian, and two of the boys were there and were eating in the kitchen. They go through some photos showing the inside and the outside of the house. Then they jump into that first interview that was recorded January 4th with Brian. And what's crazy to me is listening to this interview. This is a man who has allegedly killed his wife and has admitted to dismembering and disposing of her body. And honestly, you wouldn't know it. And you wouldn't know it by the way he talks. Although I did catch in all of the interviews they played today is he referred to Anna in the past tense many times when talking to investigators. The audio was really muffled. And in the first interview, his kids were in the background. So for me, it was hard to understand some things that were being said, but let's jump into what I got. Brian says that Anna came home from D.C. that past Friday. Anna texted him the flight information, and he shows that screenshot to the officer. It was from the JetBlue app with the arrival flight information for December 30th. Friday at 6:01 a.m., he texted, "Flight on time." She responds, "Yes, boarding now." At 7:59 a.m., she texts, "Landed." At 12:07 p.m., there were photos of Anna and the kids texted to her. He said that she would take his phone and send the photos to herself. 6:33 p.m., there were 7 more photos sent to her phone. Brian explains that Anna was using an app called Viber. It's like WhatsApp, and she would use that to communicate with people at work. He said previously her SIM card had stopped working, and she was using that app. He said Anna's sister, who lives in Europe, uses it as well. There were some text messages from Brian to Anna. Those were on Monday, January 2nd at 2:33 p.m. and 7:18 p.m., as well as a text from January 3rd. And he was explaining he was trying everything he could to get in touch with Anna. He did say her SIM card was working when she came home this last time. He said that work paid for her phone line, and they talk about the apps she used like Uber. He said they have a lot more contact with each other when she's arriving back home. He explains when she got back that Friday, she was running late and he had errands to run. So when he got back home, they just spent the rest of the day hanging out. He said Anna was tired and just not feeling well. On New Year's Eve, which was Saturday the 31st, Anna worked out in the morning at the gym and then got her nails done. She also offered to take the kids to an indoor play area in Canton to give Brian a break. He said he got some time alone to get dinner started since their friend was coming over. They celebrated the new year, and he talks about Anna signing that champagne box with well wishes for the new year. He said at this point, he did not have access to his phone. Anna was texting a lot with work and mentioned to their friend that she was worried about work. She was scheduled to leave that Tuesday, but said there was an emergency with one of the buildings, and she would have to leave early that next morning. Brian mentions that Anna had worked late on Christmas Eve as well. He said Anna didn't explain the work issue, but he said one place had a leak and another place was raided by the FBI, so there were issues at some of the buildings. When returning home from D.C., she would normally bring her carry-on bag, but this trip, she didn't bring very much with her. He claims that Anna woke him up around 6:10 in the morning, and one of their sons heard her leaving and got up. Their son asked if a taxi was there. Brian said he didn't know if Anna said that or if his son saw one. Anna was planning to take an earlier than normal flight that Tuesday, but he said he never got a confirmation for that from her. She usually only sends her arrival information to him, and she usually flies JetBlue because she had their credit card, and she would need to spend so much money to get the points, and so that changed their dynamics in the past month. She always flew into Ronald Reagan in D.C. and then Boston Logan. He said their son usually gets up early and watches his iPad, but anytime he hears action downstairs, he'll come downstairs. So he said the kid must have heard his mom leaving. On New Year's Eve, their son came down to hang out a bit with their friend. He said their friend Jim stayed until almost 1 or so. And he said the past week, Anna seemed stressed from her job. He said they went to bed a little before 1:30 in the early morning hours of New Year's Day, and that's when she told him she had to go back. He thought it was odd, but he said he also gets what's going on. She was supposed to be there the whole week, but work had been like that for a month or so, and it did cut into their family time. He said the only problem they had in their marriage is they weren't able to spend a lot of time together. He couldn't move to D.C. because of his fraud case, and there was no talk of divorce or affairs. He said their friend left around 12:50 to 1 a.m. The two of them talked. He went to the bathroom, and she asked to go to bed. Brian said he went to clean up the kitchen, and then she told him she had to leave. On December 27th, Anna worked from home because she was so sick. He said people have been sending messages for Anna, and he said he did have access to her Instagram. He had people call saying they thought they saw action on her Facebook, and he said it could have been him since he's looking at everything that comes in, but he also was asking people to look out too. He said his phone was under his son's pillow on New Year's Eve. It was kind of hard to hear what he said here, but he said on the second he starts to get nervous and starts calling around to her friends and coworkers because she had told him not to call and embarrass her at work, which is why he reached out to them first. He gets a call asking if everything was okay, and he said no, he had not heard from Anna. Now, she has no family stateside other than Brian and the kids. She does have a sister that lives in Toronto, and he said that sister was available to talk to law enforcement. Anna's mother lives in Belgrade, and her sister let her mom know what was going on. He lists some of Anna's contacts in D.C., including her lover, William Fausto. He said they do their finances together, but she was much better at paying the bills. He said the job in D.C. paid 3 times more than her previous salary. And then he talks about his legal problems and said it was taking a long time, so they were depressed about that. He also mentions he has restitution to pay. Law enforcement asks about this case, and Brian said that he misrepresented a Warhol painting after losing money on it. He said he didn't want to hide it from law enforcement. It's extremely embarrassing, but if it helps find Anna sooner, he's okay telling them what it's about. He said Anna had a cancer scare the year before, but it ended up being nothing. But recently, she kept saying she felt like she was pale. Brian said he would tell Anna to stay in D.C. to get rest and that he would take care of the kids. At the time Anna went missing, the kids were aged 2, 4, and 6. During the interview, the oldest child needed help unlocking the iPad, which Brian gave him the code for, and the middle child produced ladies' glasses during the interview. On Brian's phone, they go through a text thread and then the camera roll. They go on to show photos from inside the house, and the witness explains where each room is located. There is a photo of a bedroom with a large hole in the ceiling, and that sheetrock was found in his bedside drawer. They also show photos of the basement, and they go on to talk about the Volvo. The witness noticed the trunk was lined with plastic sheeting, and also in the trunk, he saw a maple seedling. It's one of those things that spins when it falls from a tree. After he finished the walk around the residence, he went back to the police department and checked for international flights, and then he also put a flag on her passport. He talked to the police in D.C., and they were going to do a walkthrough of her place there, and he also called Anna's sister. Later that evening, he went back to Brian's house with the fire department to investigate the pool. They showed a picture of the pool. There was a lot of debris in there, and the water line was low, but it wasn't completely gone. So they brought floodlights and also a pike pole to see if there was anything at the bottom. They scraped the bottom, but nothing was found. They got back to the police department around 10:30 p.m., and the witness reviewed his notes. And on January 5th, he started contacting friends and family. He created a missing persons bulletin, which was put on social media and then sent to other law enforcement departments. He looked at Anna's phone pings, and they also used canines to do an area scent search behind the house because her phone pinged in the area. He looked for Amtrak travel, and they had troopers at Logan Airport to check each ticketing agency. They called cab companies from all around the area. They also checked with Uber and Lyft and obviously found nothing. They requested help from troopers with the Norfolk County DA's office. He met with a couple of other officers from the Karen Reed trial, DeChico and Buchanan, and they listened to that first interview together. And the three of them would go back to Brian's house with two other investigators. When they got there, the nanny was leaving, and Brian was there as well as his mom and all three boys. They conducted a second interview with Brian at the dining room table again. Two investigators were with his mom, and there were no dividers between the rooms that they were in. During the second interview, they go through New Year's Day, him going to get juice and milk for the kids, and then running errands for his mom. He tells what Anna was wearing, which are the boots, a black coat, and a Prada bag. He says sometimes Anna thought she was in over her head with her job, and their friend who came New Year's Eve was her former boss. She had talked about coming back to Massachusetts, but Brian said they had made huge sacrifices for her to be there in D.C. and also in getting the townhouse, and he thought she needed to stick it out. He said Anna had talked about seeing a psychiatrist, which was the first time she had ever talked about that. He supported the idea. He said he was seeing one. And also with the big cutback in family time, it had been difficult for everybody. He says he may have been putting pressure on her for more family time. He said the marriage was okay. They spoke all the time. And then he names off some of Anna's closest friends. He says he doesn't use social media, but he guesses Anna's iMessages were coming up on his phone for some reason. That's interesting. They didn't confirm that today, but could be the way he found out about the affair if, in fact, her messages were coming on his phone. He says he doesn't think Anna ever left her phone at the house, and she never turns her phone off. They talk a lot, and if she can't talk, she'll text him. She'll call him back soon. He mentions that Anna had a bad relationship with a cousin who she owned land with, and there was a dispute over a land deal that fell through. He says all of this feels like a bad dream, and he can't wake up. He said he's had a hard time sleeping. Now, I'm not 100% sure if I heard this correctly, but I think he said his mother had an investigative team in D.C., and they don't think she came back. So where else would she go? He talked to a friend of theirs, and he told her she wasn't the kind of person who would go haywire like that. He checked into their accounts and saw there was no large sum of money gone from the accounts, and also Anna wouldn't leave her kids. He goes through the names of the financial accounts that Anna has access to. He said they were better than ever financially, aside from the restitution he was ordered to pay. The fraud case kept them from moving when they needed to. And he said he had recently read Anna a love letter from years earlier where they agreed their relationship could blossom as a couple under difficult circumstances. He also said they didn't argue. On New Year's Eve, everything was fine. And as far as the major arguments, they're pretty aligned with almost everything. The biggest argument they had was back in 2022 when Anna went to Belgrade due to her mom having a neurological event. And the reason they argued is because she used 2 weeks of vacation time. While she was over there, he couldn't get in touch with her for the first few days that she was in Belgrade because her phone didn't have the international plan. And so he was upset about that. Kind of wonder if those first few days are when she's in Ireland with her boyfriend. The last week of December, there was a 24 or 36-hour gap of not talking, and then she was getting home late, which wasn't normal. He said he was making a big deal about it, and she told him to relax, which he said he did. In normal conversations, they would exchange photos of the kids, and she would tell him what she was doing. He said they've never had any kind of a physical confrontation, and the investigator said it's tough for them because they don't know Anna, and there's many reasons that people go missing. Brian tells the investigator to feel free to ask any questions. He said he loves his wife, but this family isn't the same without her, and he says they can't function. Back to the mental health issues, Brian says he doesn't know of any, but he said his mom may have a different opinion. He denies physical abuse, financial stress, and said the biggest stress was the separation with her working in D.C. When asked if he hurt Anna, he said, "No, I love my wife." He did say he was overwhelmed with the 3 kids, and they had talked about splitting the kids up. He asked, "What about your job? How's that going to work?" He said they just didn't have a good solution. Law enforcement asked Brian if he had to go anywhere to look for Anna, where would he go? He says Anna wasn't someone who would just leave and go out. She was adventurous, but not that adventurous. This is one of those times where he is very much talking about her in the past tense. He gives an example that Anna was laid over in Frankfurt for a while. Brian told her to go out on the town, and she said no, she would not go off on her own. And he can't imagine she would do anything to hurt herself. They tell Brian if he allows them to look at his phone, it would help them create a permanent timeline. Brian says that's a lot. And then he asked if they want to download everything, and the investigator says yes. Brian says he wants to do everything he can to support this, but he needs to call someone named Tracy who represented him in the art fraud case. He asks how long it would take to download his phone because he says he does work on his phone too, and he only wants to find Anna. Law enforcement tells Brian they'd like to talk to the kids, but with someone who's trained to interview young children. Brian asks how long that will take, and the witness says they can go longer if they're investigating a specific incident, but this interview should be about an hour. So they make plans to interview the children the next morning at 10 a.m. Law enforcement talks about wanting to look around the house again, and Brian says they're free to take another look. Law enforcement asks him about the attic, and the tape ends. The witness is asked who is talking in the background. He said the other detectives were interviewing Brian's mom. The witness walked around the house again. He went into the attic, but it's unfinished and there was nothing up there. In the basement, he manipulated a trash bag from the outside and felt like there was a carpet sample or a piece of a rug in there. They checked the shed outside. They walked around the backyard, didn't see anything. They also looked at the Volvo again with permission from Brian. There was a receipt from Lowe's in there from January 4th, as well as a cell phone that was his son's. Other than the interviews that day, he spoke with Brian on the phone just before 9 a.m., letting him know they were working and they would be in touch. They talked again around 3:45 p.m., where he left Brian a message, and Brian called right back. Brian asked the witness about the media and also getting a PR person. As far as talking to the media, the witness told Brian he did not recommend it. January 6th, this is the day they have that large-scale search with other agencies, and nothing was found. They did neighborhood canvases looking for surveillance, and there was also a press conference. The witness and Trooper DeChico from the Karen Reed trial, if you followed that one, spoke to a friend of Anna's named Jen Mutlu. They did get digital devices from Brian with consent. And on the 6th, he also spoke to Brian over the phone. He then spoke on Saturday at the home. Former Trooper Proctor was there for that interview, as well as a few other investigators. At this point, the devices were returned back to Brian. In another conversation with Brian at his house, Brian said Anna used WhatsApp and Instagram. They talked about different accounts and also real estate the couple had. His fraud attorney, Tracy Minor, is on the tape saying there's not a pay schedule yet for his restitution, and in these kind of cases, there's usually a 5-year period to pay it off. Brian said at this point he had paid almost half of what he owes. He says Anna was asking when he could come to D.C., but Brian couldn't with that federal case still pending. But they did talk about the kids going to D.C. without Brian. He explains to law enforcement how, as part of his home confinement, he has to send emails every Thursday asking permission to leave and to run errands. He talks about his mom having cataract surgery and that she was going to stay with him, but she got better quicker than expected. Talks about getting lost going to his mom on New Year's Day. It took longer than normal because he didn't have GPS. He didn't tell his mom he was coming over, and he said it took him a minute to get inside since he didn't have his phone. And eventually, he said the plan was for his mother to make the move to D.C. with him and the boys, but she would have her own place. But at that point, there was nothing decided for sure about the boys alone moving to D.C. And he says again that when he woke up on January 1st, his son was already awake and said his mom had already left. So that ended the day there. Like I said, it was very hard to hear parts of these interviews with the background noise and just the sound quality on the video not being that great. I want to go back and re-listen to a couple of places to see if I can make out what was said or try to put it through something to clear up the audio. If I find anything important, I'll add it tomorrow, but very well could have a short day tomorrow. And as soon as I know something, I'll put it out on my socials. But we'll be back at 9 a.m. sharp. live streaming. So come hang out with the Alibis. And a big thanks to everybody who hung out today. We had a great group, good conversation. The mods were rocking it. And it's just a really great place to sit and watch a trial together because we really keep it focused on the trial and the victim. I have to say, getting back to work today has been very good for me. Really had to force myself to do it, but sitting down and doing what I love has been really, really good. So looking forward to following this trial. And again, we got Corey Richens coming up in February. So as of now, we are on the ground running for the next few months, and I am ready. So that is it for today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you tomorrow.